Our agenda, real quick, just to kind of kick it off, is we're going to do some welcome and introductions. Even though I kind of introduced us, we're going to go back around. Harjinder Singh, he's with ANB Technologies, which is a Atlassian partner. He's going to walk us through how ANB is mastering IT assets in Jira Service Management for their customers. So hopefully you guys can obtain some great intel on some processes and things that the art of the possible of what can be done when it comes to managing your IT assets. Then we're going to go in. We'll have a little bit of an open forum. We'll, of course, we'll be asking him questions and picking his brain. Then we're going to go into a little bit of a discussion around Atlassian Team 25. Howard's going to kind of throw out some of the lay of the land of what to expect at Team 25. It's going to be in Anaheim this year. Yay. And then we're going to go into doing our normal community feedback and networking, just kind of an open forum, anything people want to speak about, learn about, kind of network with each other, learn about each one of us. And with that, I am going to introduce myself, George Kopsahillis. I am one of the 3 community leads for the Northern New Jersey ACE. I've been doing this now for I'm going to say about 2 years. Picked up after the old folks kind of left, going back before COVID. This was a chapter, and it kind of died off, and we brought it back. So we're trying to keep building this community. Going back again a little bit, we'll talk more about cadences and stuff like that. But I'm going to let Howard and then Nancy do a quick introduction. And hello, Howard, you're up, buddy.
Hey, yeah. So I've been a community leader for 8 years. And so, yeah, I had people that kind of faded away during COVID and we stopped doing things. I coming from a financial services background. And I also help out the New York chapter and any other chapter that needs my services on the East Coast. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to team.
I
Oh, it went on mute again.
Sorry about that. I am the other half of the Kopsahillis duo, or as I like to refer to myself, the better half. I work at Schrodinger, and we recently migrated to from Jira Server to Cloud, and we are in the midst of a JSM implementation. So, Harjinder, I'm thrilled to be seeing what I can do with assets because that is a missing piece.
Terrific, thank you. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if anyone that else is on here, I don't know, Steve, Daly, Ariel, Peter, if you want to do a quick hello to the team, introduce where you're from, and
Yeah, sure. I'm Steve Packer. I'm from Wilson Elser, out of New York City. It's a large lawyer firm, and I was just brought on board with them about a year ago to bring up a asset management system for them, and they were moving forward with Jira Service Management. And when I came on board, we're in the process of bringing up Jira Asset Management for them under this system, integrating both Active Directory and Landsweeper into our focus here, and bringing all the assets into Jira. We're right in the midst of it.
great.
And that is being done with a company called E7, who we'll also partner with.
Great. Welcome. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Peter Lorero. I work for Nancy. I just came on board in November as
my sympathies, Peter, but
I don't know what you're talking about.
we'll talk later. Go
Okay,
ahead.
yeah. I'll blink twice if I'm in distress. Anyway, I came on board as asset manager, and so we're kind of starting this journey. Is that correct? And yeah, so I'm eager to find out what can be done and how much can be automated through Jira Asset Management.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Great to meet you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Hey, Ariel.
Hi, everyone. I was waiting to see if someone else will say something, but yeah,
It's always the hard part of these things, right? It's like, do I go next, or do I cut someone off? Or I usually cut someone off, but go ahead.
No worries. Yeah. I'm a community leader from the Vancouver area. I also work a lot in the Atlassian assets and just want to see like how else I can improve my knowledge.
Great.
So yeah,
Welcome. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too.
And then there's Daily 3. All right. If you when you get some,
We'll leave Paul on his own there.
okay, terrific. All right. With that said, I am going to hand the controls over to Harjinder because it's great to hear that we've got a lot of people that are interested in assets. So am I, by the way. Let me Harjinder. You know, I'm so used to Microsoft Teams now, I completely forget how to stop sharing stuff in this. There we go. I think it's here. Oh, no, it's not there, is it? It's somewhere up here. There it is. Ba-da-dum. Ooh, what, where? Blue button share upper right. Blue button share. This my screen. Stop share that. Would that do it? Ah, hey.
Yeah, it did it.
It's good. I've been in technology, folks, for over 30 years, and I figured out how to unshare a Zoom. Harjinder, buddy, you're up.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, George, and hello, everyone. Some of you I have seen and met before, and for those I haven't, I'll just do a quick introduction. I'm Harjinder from ANB Technologies. I've been in the service management industry or practice, I would say, for last 15 plus years, dating myself, but still it's good to kind of lay that out there. I'm really excited about asset management or CMDB in some way. This topic I really love, and actually George and I, we have worked on previous engagements together on this subject. So it's very close to our hearts as much as it can be really complex. You also need these fun projects to deal with solving complex problems. So I'm really excited that a lot of you joined and want to see this functionality in Jira Service Management. So with that, I'll share my screen and we'll get started. And we'll keep it very interactive. You know, let's not make it very formal. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in. Yeah. So if you can confirm, George, once you can see my PowerPoint.
Looks perfect.
All right. So we already did the introductions. The way I want to slice this presentation, or in general asset management, I always slice it into 2-3 different components. First, you want to start with strong foundation. Obviously, that sounds cliche, but it's very important. You're talking about data here. You need to understand what things you need, how this data can be stored in Jira Service Management, what are the different object types, how you're going to build the relationships. Before even bringing the data, you need to understand what your future house will going to look like, right? So when we talk about establishing IT asset management foundation, think about you're creating the skeleton of the house, building the foundation, or even building the house. When we talk about point number 3, where asset data import and integration with data sources, this is where we're going to start bringing furniture. We're going to start bringing people into the house, right? So our storyline for asset management journey, we're going to be around those couple of concepts, right? So I'll touch base how to lay out strong foundation for your asset management. We'll start with that first. Then we'll talk about how you can bring the data in to asset management using asset data import and other techniques. And most importantly, once you have the data, how you can use it for different processes, right? If you can't use the data, it's kind of useless. And then last one, I'll share a quick case study. Did an implementation for a large a financial services company for asset management. We'll share like what are the challenges they were facing, how Jira Service Management asset functionality was able to help them, right? So without further ado, I got a lot of topics to cover, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. Here is real quick about who we are, ANB Technologies. We are Gold Solution Partner, ITSM specialized. Jira Service Management and asset management is kind of our forte when it comes to IT service management, HR service management, IT operations management, AI ops, asset. That's kind of our focus, right? And that's what we do really well. So I'll jump in straight away into the asset management topic. So typically, before you start an asset management program, these are common challenges or questions people typically have, right? What assets do I really need in asset management? This is a very common question, right? Okay, let's set up an ITAM program, but okay, what do I need there? And I'll go over the approach in a bit, but I just want to kind of bring those questions just to spark something in the brains of this community, right? The other question typically comes, how do I structure my asset data? Who owns this data? You bring in the data and everyone is like, I don't own it. Where is the CMDB team? Or where's the asset team that'll gonna manage the completeness and accuracy of the data, right? I'm pretty sure you guys have seen these questions and challenges all the time. What's the best way to import the data? How do we maintain it? How do we make sure the data is accurate and complete? One of the core objectives of IT asset management in CMDB is completeness and accuracy, right? So how do we make sure we do that? And how do we ensure this is not a one-time project and it's a long-term governance? So to solve all that, you need to hire ANB. I'm just kidding. What you will need to do is you need to think methodically what will be your implementation approach, and you need to think from 4 different angles. People typically talk about people, process, platform. I would say the fourth element, which is very important here, is data, right? So we'll go over those aspects in a bit. Now, let's start to our topic about IT Asset Management Foundation. So in this topic, again, most of you seems like you're familiar with what is IT asset management, what's a typical life cycle, but I'll briefly cover those topics, just maybe a few seconds, and then we'll jump straight into what an overall implementation approach looks like when you're thinking about building a solid foundation before even bringing the data in, right? I will talk about some data modeling technique, how to structure your asset schema in Jira Service Management, and we go from there. So let's start with some basics here. What is an IT asset management? Why do I need it? What it does? So from ITIL and typical, industry frameworks, it's nothing but it's tracking and managing your IT assets throughout its life cycle, right? So the key words here are managing IT assets. So depending on your organization, you got to define what are those IT assets, and I'll come back to that in a bit. Throughout the life cycle, what does that mean? That means right from the time you're planning, not even you have acquired it, right? The time from you plan till you dispose or retire those assets. And we'll talk about the life cycle in a bit. So it's a lot of people think ITAM is let's dump the data, let's build the integration, and we are done. No. If you're looking for a holistic program, you got to think right from the time you're planning to acquire those assets till you dispose, because you may have financial responsibility. Once you get the asset, if you don't dispose properly, your company may be liable for certain things. Anyway, so what are the common IT assets types? So typically, we have seen people call it, okay, hardware and software assets. That's all good. Hardware assets such as physical laptop, desktop, servers, etc. That's typically the assets that you care about. Software assets, any type of subscription, operating system, software, etc. We actually sliced it into, and this was actually done for this financial services firm, where we said, okay, we actually need a third category for cloud assets as well. There is no, especially if you think about like AWS RDS or S3, those type of components, they don't necessarily fit right into software assets or hardware assets class. But either way, you could still argue that AWS resources could be part of software because it's a subscription service. We get it. But the point is, this 3 elements should define what is the scope of your IT asset management. And you should clearly lay it out. What does that scope looks like? Because IT asset management, as you could imagine, it could be a huge ocean. Until you don't have a clear scope, you'll be there forever otherwise, right? So again, overall IT asset management, it's to track and manage your assets. Make sure you clearly define which assets do you really care about. Typically, organizations start with hardware assets, then they jump into software and cloud assets. Now, Again, you all understand IT asset management objectives, but high level, I'll quickly mention, obviously, it's mainly for inventory management or creating like a single system of record, but also for risk reduction, cost optimization. It can improve your asset utilization from security and compliance perspective. It can enhance your security and compliance at your organization, and obviously streamlined your IT operations. And by the way, all the things that I'm mentioning, I want to keep us focused on IT asset management, but you could apply same principles for any type of enterprise assets, whether you're managing for facilities. We're working with a government client or government agency, I should say, state and local. They wanted to manage their fire brigade trucks and the radio walkie-talkies that they use. So whatever valuable assets you may have in your organization, you could follow the same principles and processes that I'm talking here in general. And obviously you can use JSM asset management functionality. But we'll stick to IT asset management, at least for this particular presentation. So we talked about IT asset management life cycle, right? From plan to retire. What does it mean? So planning stage is when you actually identify the needs, you define your budgets, you define your demand. You need to have a proper planning team, ITAM team that meets with different teams and understand from the leadership, what's the forecast for 2025? What's the forecast for 2026? Are we going to do any mergers or acquisition, which will impact my ITAM program? Are we going to hire more people so that I can maintain my minimum stock inventory? So all that counts into your planning phase, right? Obviously, from planning, there may be demand for which you need to acquire or procure new assets. From procurement, obviously, those assets needs to be deployed. From deployment, you got to maintain them. So, while they are in the operational life cycle, when people are using those assets, this maintain stage is where you typically integrate your assets with ITSM processes like incident, change, problem tickets, etc. And then obviously at the end of the life of assets, you want to retire them. And in certain cases, especially for hardware, you want to dispose them properly before recovering any residual value. And it's a cycle, right? It's a cyclical process. Again, not to dive into each of these activities in detail, but high level, think big, think holistic. That's the whole point. Now, I want to share, like I mentioned, it's a journey, and people can get overwhelmed with what to do, when to do, how to do it. We have used this very standardized implementation approach for all our ITAM programs, whether hardware, software, or cloud asset management. Feel free to use this if you want to deep dive into this approach. I'm happy to do it offline, but high level, I'll again mention it. You start with your vision, right? You start with what are your goals, business goals, long-term strategy. How are you going to measure the ITAM success? What are those KPIs, critical success factors, and operational metrics? So you start with that. The second activity is based on your goals, you define what are the use cases. What is my scope for asset management, right? That scope will define how your data model in asset management will look. And I'll show you a simple example about what data model means. And obviously, it's a people process platform thing, right? So as you think about data and the data you need to bring in, you need to think about the whole life cycle. We talked about plan to retire. So make sure you define those processes as part of your design phase. Then comes the implementation piece. This is where you structure your asset schemas, object types, different attributes, and you start creating those attributes, building those relationship back in the data model, right? Kind of again, building the house. Until step 3 is you're literally building the house. And step number 4 is when you're thinking about bringing the data in. And again, these bringing data in is not simple as just copying CSV file, etc. You need to be very methodical, especially in today's world. Everyone is talking about AI. Especially in the near term, you're going to see asset management will going to play even more important role because AI will going to make decisions out of your asset data. right? So think about when you're bringing the data in, what data is important? Does it even belong to asset management? And how it's going to help your processes. So that all happens in step 4. Obviously, this is where you integrate with data manager and discovery and whatnot, and you bring the data in. But more importantly, you also integrate with other processes, incident, problem, change, to make sure that those processes can leverage that asset data. And last but not the least, this is obviously, it's a continuous process. You want to make sure your data accuracy and completeness is maintained. And the last one, obviously, the point number 5 is continuous governance and improvement, the CPI, the CSI, right? So again, use this to as you feel appropriate. But this approach has worked for our customers. It's a very methodical approach, tried and tested. Now I'll touch base. I mentioned a couple of things, and I want to show a little bit more detail about those features, especially data model. So like I said, the very first thing you need to do is build your vision. Before even bringing the data, before even touching JSM, you should be envisioning, what is my target state? How will my asset data look, right? So this is what you do. You do a logical data model. It's a logical data modeling technique where you basically focus on 3 things. What asset types you need. So this is where your scope. I need server, I need switch, I need, XYZ. What attributes will I need to capture as part of each of these asset types? So if I have server, do I need server name, IP address, who owns it, etc. And then relationship, right? How will this asset be related to another asset or configuration item from CMDB standpoint? Relationship data is super important, especially when you talk about incident and change management processes. Who provides you impact analysis, root cause analysis information, right? Without relationship, your asset is nothing but inventory. So it's literally like an Excel file. So I highly recommend all my customers that when you're building asset management, make sure you're not talking about just object types and attributes, but also relationship, how these things will be interrelated. That is going to enrich your database. So again, just an example, very simple example on the right side. Now, I'll just skip this. One of the other methodology we use is, typically when you start ITAM program, you're going to hear from different departments. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need that. You got to be careful there, because once you bring in data, it's very hard to get rid of it, right? So be methodical right in the beginning. And what we call it is a use case based methodology. So it's very simple. If somebody says we need some data, our first question is, okay, tell us the use case. How are you going to use it, or how are you going to use that data to report? And more importantly, the other 2 elements that you see on this slide. All right, you need that data. Tell us also what will be the source of that data and who will going to own it, right? Everyone wants data, they need it in CMDB or asset, but no one want to own it. So that is also very important. You identify how this will be owned right from the beginning so that there is no confusion. Again, this is just an example about data model asset attributes. So take an example as, let's say you're collecting data for a server, make sure you understand each of those attributes that you will need and how you will be populating it. You need to go to that level of detail where every single element of asset, you have a mapping to how that data will be brought in or maintained in the future. For example, host name, IP address, maybe it's coming from discovery or let's say Landsweeper or some other tool. But what about owner information? Typically, this is this is not a discoverable information in most of the cases, so you may have to manually populate it, right? And then I was talking about before even touching JSM, you should be thinking about what your target state looks like. What is your vision? So take an example here. This is the example I was giving for a financial services firm. They had a trading business service, and they wanted to see how this service is related to different components and what are all the assets interrelated, so that they could, number one, run incident change and other ITSM processes end to end, but also understand from dependency standpoint if they're doing those changes. So as you could see, this is actually a very simplistic version of it. But we started again, CMDB or asset management. Do not forget about the service model. Right? Everything at the end of the day, it's either a service or an application at the top level. So what we did there is we build the services at the top, then different environments, whether prod, QA, etc. And then they had on-prem and AWS. So we kind of dot lined every single resources, how they fit into the application and service architecture. So again, they knew what they wanted right from the get-go, and this is very important. Then you know what your goal is. So again, this is all logical data modeling before even again touching the JSM piece. Now we know what our target is. Now let's see how we can do those things in JSM. So we touched a few things about data model and logical representation of certain asset types. Let's see how they map to JSM. So JSM provides something called asset database. So that's the overall repository. Within that, you have a concept of schemas. So think of schemas as different small databases. Typically, you want to create different schemas depending on different type of data that you're storing, and also from permissioning standpoint. For example, if you're creating a schema for IT assets, so let's say in this small little database, you want to store anything around IT, then you can control who sees this. Similarly, for facilities, you probably want to create a separate database where you store your office location, HVACs, buildings, and whatnot. So think of schemas as, again, small little databases within asset management. And each schema, the other reason why you would create a different schema is when you want to control permission, who can see what, right? Within the schema, you cannot control, at least at this stage. Now, once you have the schema built, think of this as your small database, IT asset. Then remember the exercise we did that, let's do data modeling, right? And one of the things we wanted to identify was, what different assets do I need? Those are nothing but, in JSM, we call it object types. So in our data model, we had, for example, services, applications, servers. Those all will become object types. And then last but not the least, within each asset type, we defined what were those attributes, like the server name, etc. Those are nothing but the fields within each of these object types. There are different ways to create fields. We're not going to get into that, but that's how you kind of map it to the data model back. Cool. Please feel free to ask any questions if you have. This is again a same mapping information between the logical data model that we created with JSM. So here we had asset types, which are nothing but object types. And then you have asset attributes. Those are the attributes within each object type, right? Pretty straightforward. All right, so now we have built the house, right? The house has the structure. Now let's see how we can bring in the data. What are the different ways to bring in the data in Jira Service Management? And I'll show you a few things, at least in the instance as well. So these are 6, and maybe there are more ways, but these are 6 more most common ways to import or bring data or manage data in Jira Service Management. The first one is asset discovery. I'll drill down into it into the next slide. It's basically an IP-based horizontal discovery which scans your network. The second one is data manager. This is still in beta, but some customers are already using it, including some of our customers. Think of it as a middleman. It can integrate with your other source of information, such as somebody mentioned Landsweeper, CrowdStrike, etc. So it can bring data from those sources and add it to your asset, right? And there is a very specific, there are very specific use cases why you want to use data manager instead of discovery, right? And I'll drill down into it in a bit. Then obviously there is import option like CSV and JSON. Sometimes you have, those one-time imports. Let's say somebody acquired a new company, right? And while doing that, they need to import certain fixed assets, which will not going to change from the other database. So for those one-time imports, CSV is not a bad option, right? Again, like I mentioned, one-time imports. You don't want to do CSV imports on a daily basis. Manual. Obviously, there is always, you can give people permission and they can manage certain attributes in the asset management, but I would caution limit as much manual updates as possible, right? There is API available for asset management, so you could always connect with that and build integration with your other source and update assets in JSM. And there are also some marketplace apps available that helps you integrate with other sources. In today's discussion, I'm going to focus on the first two. The import is obviously very straightforward, manual. I don't need to show. It's literally go in the asset and do it. API and marketplace apps, maybe for future conversation. So let's drill down into the asset discovery piece. So like I said, now the house is built. Now we need to find out what to store, what furniture to bring in. So again, going back to our scope of asset, if you have a traditional data center at your organization where physical assets are sitting, this is not a bad option, especially if you have JSM Premium and obviously Enterprise. You get asset discovery free of cost. It's part of your licensing. The way it works is it's an agentless network scanner. You provide an IP range, and it can discover things that are pingable or on the network, right? As long as they have an IP address and they are on the network live, asset discovery will be able to find it. Obviously, there are limitations. It has patents for some of the common technologies, like for Windows, it has the WMI, SNMP, SSH for Linux and whatnot. Bottom line, you could use this agentless discovery tool to scan your network and bring in all the devices that I mentioned on the screen, the Linux, the Unix servers, the Windows, desktop, laptops, routers, switches, etc. One thing I would mention, the way Atlassian is going is it's moving away from discovery. It's gonna go more towards data manager because their belief is about federated data model, which I strongly agree. You can't have one source or one method to bring in all the assets. It can never be true. You have so many different data types that you would need to rely on other sources, and data manager will going to play a big role in that. So that's in a nutshell how discovery is. Now I created a very simple kind of a chart here or diagram to show how asset discovery works. So if we pay attention to the bottom of the screen, you have JSM, which is on the cloud. And again, I'm giving example everything about cloud, not data center, etc. So imagine you have JSM SaaS application cloud, right? And it has asset database. What you would need is something called asset discovery collector in your data center. So this box that you see, this belongs to your company, right? You will need like a Windows or a Linux server where you will install the asset data collector, and then you will create patterns or you will configure patterns. You don't need to create, they are given by Atlassian. And you will need to create schedules and IP ranges and what it does on a given date and time, and obviously the credentials. It'll go in the network, scan different devices, and then grab and then push it back to asset database. The push from collector to asset doesn't happen automatically. You have to set up import jobs, but definitely it's possible. Once you configure those, it's pretty much a hands-off configuration. You do want to check time to time any error logs, but once you set it up, you can put it on a scheduler and it can scan a network or an IP range on a given date and time on a daily or whatever basis that you want, right? So a very good tool, very good application, especially if you're looking for at least basic network and other device information, right? And again, like I said, if you're on premium or enterprise edition, you have it, you can use it. Then comes the data manager, right? So the data manager, think of it as the middleman between JSM asset and your other sources. So what are your other sources? So as you could see on the left side, it could be your SQL database that's storing procurement data. Could be an ODBC connection to your PeopleSoft for financial information. Could be a CSV file. It could be, and there are a reason you see here on the product side, there are out-of-the-box connectors available. Let's say SCCM and CrowdStrike and Landsweeper. These are nothing but the product boxes here. And it can also import schema from another schema. So the point is, what you see on the point number 1 here is all different sources of data that you have today in your environment. The point number 2 is you'll need to install a local server in your premise. That'll again, think of it as a collector. It'll gonna integrate with all these sources and then push the data into data manager, where the beauty of it is once you have the data, you could do transformation mapping, you could cleanse the data, import. Now, import doesn't mean it's importing into JSM asset yet, but import it in a staging table, and then the data goes and it's saved within the staging table. Now, the missing pieces, if you see this line here, which a lot of customers are talking about. So I have the data from all these sources. It goes into data manager. I have the staging table here. Imagine this box where you see saved search. Imagine this is a staging table. So I have cleansed it. I have removed duplicates. The data is there. There is no native way to bring that data into JSM asset today. You have to export it into CSV and do it manually. The native import feature, it's coming soon. I'm hopeful. Again, I was hopeful since last year, but as per Atlassian, it's coming soon, probably in Q2. So once that happens, then it's the magic, right? You get the data from all sources, you cleanse it, and then, well, it goes to asset automatically. So that's kind of their vision. If you look at it, why this is good way going forward, because you can't be, as you know, there are different technologies today. There is Nutanix, there is GCP, there is AWS, there is different, you name it. Most of the companies, they are using those platforms. So it's very hard for one discovery tool to know everything and discover everything. So that's why I'm saying asset data manager is the right choice by them, because they will need a middleman to integrate with all those different data elements and bring the data in, right? So again, if you're interested in asset management, I strongly suggest start looking at data manager. Even though it's in beta, it has pretty good features, at least to play around. It can bring the data up to the staging table, and then obviously you can import it as a CSV for now until they bring the native import feature. So with that, I'll jump to JSM real quick. I also want to check the time. So I'll just do a quick demo. First, I'll talk about JSM asset management. So, and can somebody confirm you can hear me and you can still see my screen, right?
You're good.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Yep. So on the top, you see this asset option. Once you click that, that's your asset database. That's where you see all the magic. Now here, you can create your schemas. Like I mentioned, schema is nothing but your small little databases. Few examples, we created schema for customers, employees, facilities, IT assets, etc. I'll quickly jump to IT assets. Within that, we have, again, this is just a very simple example, right? Just so that you guys can know the capabilities. So we divided IT assets into hardware, software, network, and whatnot. Within hardware, we have all these assets that came in. We also did kind of mapping into who owns which device. That's very important because especially when I'm creating incidents and whatnot, I don't want to see all the assets when I'm reporting my laptop is not working. So this gives a good information. Even for change management, if I know who owns a particular server, if I'm creating a change request, I pretty much should be asking approval from that person. So this data should be maintained there. Again, some examples here, we created different object types within it, financial department assets, accounting assets, etc. Again, we need probably a detailed discussion otherwise to really go into it. But let me show you one other thing that, like I mentioned, once you have the asset, obviously you can discover it, but also there is a data manager feature. As you could see, it's in beta. Data manager provides you a lot of functionality. obviously like importing, but also cleansing and import. This is where you can create rules like remove duplicates, match this name with the other data source, and kind of merge the data. So it's really powerful from that angle. Now, one thing I want to mention, there are out-of-box connectors available by data manager to integrate with a lot of other sources. So Azure VM, Defender, Jamf, Intune, ServiceNow for that matter, Tenable, and AD, and they are, as from what I learned, they are bringing in more sources pretty soon. So this is really powerful. You don't have to build custom integration. You use these and kind of integrate and bring in the data. Now, one last piece, like I mentioned, the data is kind of irrelevant if you don't use it with processes. So here is a very simple example. So let's imagine I'm creating an incident and I'm an end user. When I'm reporting an incident, in this case, let's say Harshinder, and my laptop is slow. And as I'm typing in, I should be selecting, okay, which laptop is slow? What if I have two assets, right? So you saw in asset management, we have a lot of laptops, but it showed me only 2 or 3 which were relevant to me. The reason I could do that, because I had that ownership information. But the reason I wanted to give you this example, this way you are using this information that you're storing in asset management for by other processes, incident, change, etc. And this way you can make your processes be more efficient, and your service operations faster. So let's pick here Venkatesh and pick another asset, and it will submit anyway. But you get the point. So that's the third piece that I wanted to mention, and then let's get back to our slides. Now, some of the important kind of tips and tricks that we have learned and I would like to share as you're dealing with a lot of data, right? Number one, identify source of truth for any given data. You may have same data in 10 different sources. Find out which one will gonna actually win the race. That is very important, especially with data manager. You may get, let's say you're getting CrowdStrike and Azure and AD, everyone will gonna bring user information. Which one are you gonna use to store your users? So find that out. Probably AD is the right one for those kind of data. Automate data population, avoid manual entries. This is typically our guiding principle, that the moment you're saying this will be maintained manually, it's obsolete as soon as the person is done saving, right? So as much as you can automate, that's better. Leverage federated data model. Again, back to the data manager concept. Don't try to discover everything. If you already have that data somewhere else, let's say SCCM or Intune, why are you creating again traffic by discovering it again? Bring that data in from that source. However, federated data model also means do not bring everything. If all you need to know is the server name, IP address, and who owns it to run your incident and change, don't bring unnecessary information from that source. The more data you bring in, the more you need to manage. The other principle is, a lot of time people say, oh, asset is my single source of truth. Let me go there and see if this server is up and running. No, asset is not your monitoring tool, right? That's where you have ITOM and alert management, event management tool. Asset data will always going to be lagging behind depending on how your integration works. So set the right expectations when you're building this. Obviously, cleanse the data in the data source itself prior to importing, right? Once the data, garbage in, garbage out, basically, right? And CSV import functionality, you can use it for now for bringing data from data manager, right? Until they bring the native functionality. So those are some of the tips. I'll quickly go over the case study here. Yeah, go ahead.
Sadia had a question in the chat. She wanted to know if there's schemas out of the box available so people don't have to build them.
Yeah, they do. There are. So as you create schemas, there are they give you out of the box different types, people, facilities, but it's very limited, right? So there is one for IT asset, one for people, one for facilities. That's why what I mentioned before, doing that data modeling by yourself is very important, right? But yeah, there are 3 out-of-the-box schemas available that you could use, and you can extend those and build on top of it. Good question. Yeah, just real quick. So this financial organization, they went through a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So that's where they had a lot of assets and they had no idea what they owned, who owned it, lack of visibility. It was impacting their compliance and cost control, and they were actually planning to divest one of their subsidiary, and they couldn't do it because ultimately it's all about your financial value. And that's when they really needed to know what assets they owned, etc. So they created this whole ITAM program with ANB. We helped them implement obviously all these things using JSM. JSM Discovery was used, Data Manager was used. We integrated with Intune, Defender, and a lot of other platforms to bring in the data, and we also helped them set up ITAM governance team. This is just one example of like their architecture. As you could see, they had on-prem data center, Intune, Defender, AD, local SQL database, bringing in some data about their AWS and CrowdStrike, right? So it was a fairly complex project, but nicely done. And obviously great outcomes. They were able to set up their ITAM framework. They had better visibility into their assets. They were able to provide a centralized view of their IT assets, and obviously it improved their compliance and risk management. That's it from me. I'll just go over a few more slides and then we can go over questions. This we are doing it. So by the way, ANB will also going to be at Team 25. So any of you who are joining there would welcome you at our booth number 6. We are offering quite a bit of complimentary assessment. So if you're looking for an ITAM program, we're going to offer this for free, where we go in, we evaluate your current architecture, what are your different sources. We're going to provide you recommendations as to what your target state should look like, and to implement that, what that roadmap is, right? So that's totally free of cost. And then a little bit about Team 25. We're going to be there, booth number 6. We have some cool offerings there for regarding Jira Service Management. Like I said, that's our forte, something around IT, HR. You're going to see a lot of automated employee onboarding offerings coming from us, as well as for Rovo, and pass from our booth for some giveaways and cool games. This stage, I'm going to hand it over there.
Great job, Harjinder. Thank you so much. That was extremely informative. So kind of tagging on to that, I guess before we jump into Team 25, I want to do a quick conversation about that. Any questions for Harjinder? Anyone, anything that anyone has interest in asking at this point while we have them?
We do have one in the chat.
Satya did ask, do you have any suggestions where we can look for schemas existing from Atlassian or other places? Thank you. Can we go to recording? Yeah, like I said, I'm guessing you're looking for how to see what are the out-of-box schemas. So once you're on the create schema space, it'll show you there is one for IT, one for employee, and one for facilities. I think that's
so there's some out-of-the-box ones, to Harjinder's point, that can get you started in building, again, the high-level IT assets, right? I think facilities, some of the stuff, again, I think maybe from my side, just to kind of, there was a lot of information there, which is really awesome. What's the difference between a CMDB and asset management, right? So depending on what you guys are looking for from an asset perspective, most assets are there that carry a financial and sort of life cycle, right, to them. A CMDB is a CI, configuration items, more about I was server 2003 and now I am server whatever 2023. Same chassis, same blade, same whatever, or different device. So configuration is exactly about configuration and relationships, and the CIs generally find their way into your ITIL processes, or ITSM processes, I should say, which Harjinder touched on a lot, which was your incident management, even your change management, right, when you get to services and business applications, all that fun stuff. But I think a lot of context of this conversation and hopefully stuff that you got out of it was more around the asset component, which again, storing contracts against an asset is probably something you want to do. So kind of going back to PeopleSoft or other systems of record that might store your purchase orders, your contracts, other elements that you will layer on top of your assets, and make those relationships is a great place. Things like facilities. What stock room does this live in? What user, what desk might it be at? Is it a kiosk? Are they virtual, et cetera, et cetera? And then defining down to people and people related to departments and cost centers. And so you can do chargebacks, right? All kinds of other financial stuff. So all that's part of that ecosystem. And then there's this darker art of the CMDB, which is more around, what's my dependency on, right, given hosts to applications to how the business is run. And if I have an outage, what's the cost, right? Who's impacted, who's down, all that kind of fun stuff. So it's huge, and definitely reach out to Harjender and his team. And if you are at Knowledge 2025, Knowledge is it? No, Team 2025. I'm getting my vendors confused. Freudian slip. Yeah, definitely visit him. So on that note, nobody has any other questions. I'm going to share my screen. Go ahead.
There's a question in the chat from Craig.
Hey, Craig. Nice to meet you. How do you avoid conflicts with ideas? Yeah, discoveries and decisions from bet. Yep. Okay, so Harjender, how do you avoid conflicts with IDs? So I guess you mean like unique identifiers, Craig, right? Things like GUIDs, sysids, or whatever you want to use as a MAC address, maybe, as a unique identifier.
Intrusion detection system.
Okay, so IDS sort
Hacking.
of stuff. Yeah. So, and I'll let Harjender kind of answer that, but again, really asset management is there to maybe complement your IDS systems, right? So if your IDS system knows that there's a MAC address, that usually, right, they're sniffing at the network layer, and you can correlate the asset in JSM, you can then see potentially if your IDS is saying, hey, there's been a vulnerability, right? You're trying to do vulnerability response or anything like that. You can then define it back to what might have been data that you got out of SCCM, which would be, hey, here's your unique identifier based on be it MAC address or really serial numbers are the best ways. But with IDS is a lot of times, if you don't have an agent on it, you're getting MAC level stuff and IP level stuff, and you're not getting bio-serial number stuff.
Yeah, I think, George, to that point, I think Craig may be alluding towards sometimes these scanning tools can be recognized as intrusion by IDSs. So how do you avoid that?
Right.
Sure. That's a great question, and that's a typical problem. You typically need to, again, depending on whatever IDS device you're using, you need to put their exception rules. That's the only way, and the other way to do it is IDSs should also know where the traffic is coming from, right? Obviously, the attack could happen from internal versus external. That's where placement of your asset discovery collector is super important, right? If you have DMZ zones, you don't want your collector in internal network scanning through DMZ, and now you got to open the port. So maybe the better idea is to put it right in the DMZ, the collector itself. So again, I won't say there is a clear-cut one-size-fits-all model here. Depending on your ideas, you may need to play around with allowing the traffic from a specific collector, right? That can scan your network. Anything else will be treated as, hacking activity or something. Obviously, you can whitelist the IP of the collector as well. That's another way to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool, Mr. George, over to you.
All right. Yes, and actually, I am going to share my screen. We're going to talk, Howard, talk a little bit about Team 25, some things that we should be aware of, or you'd want to be aware of. I don't know, is anyone here, maybe by a raise of hands, going to Team 25? Maybe that's a good place to start. Howard is, yes, and I guess Harjender will be as well. I don't know, Craig, Steve, anyone else planning on making the trip out?
No, not this year.
Not this year? All right. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Howard. We do have a few folks that are attending. Howard.
Besides just making sure everyone is aware, one of the other things I wanted everyone to be aware of is that there's a lot you can do if you're not attending in person. And so you should sign up for free to register as an online attendee. What that gets you is all the keynotes are broadcast on in real time. So you can catch those live streamed through the event on the Atlassian website, so you won't miss out on that. So that could be advantageous for you. The other thing is that all of the sessions are recorded, and a week or 2 weeks after team is over with, you'll be able to actually go into the online and play those back. So any of the sessions that you wanted to see, you can see while not having attended in person. So a team is great. It's a couple days of vendors and customers getting together, and you have access to Atlassians to pick their brains about whatever's bothering you if you happen to have gotten the funding to attend in person. You want to go to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
So I just wanted to highlight, just so we had something to talk about, is that these are the expected guest speakers or people that are participating in the keynotes. You have the Formula One world champion. I imagine that's going to be a fireside chat between him and Mike at some point. And then there's other things throughout the week, Tuesday, Wednesday through Thursday. And I'm sure there'll be lots of stuff about AI as a trusted teammate. So you can check out what's there. I have no idea what that's going to, entail, but I'm just, encouraging everyone to do the online, so at least you can access the stuff and you can play back the keynotes. They don't last as long as the other sessions. At a certain like a week or two after they cut those off, I think. It depends on what it was. I know the James Cameron one, like after a week you couldn't see it anymore. So you want to get in there and check out those keynotes, even if you can't watch them in real time. And as you're going through highlighting which sessions you're interested in, if you go on the next slide, George, there's different
Just
tracks.
one thing to
Go ahead.
to mention real quick. Again, for those that are going, again, there is I believe some certifications that you can take. So anyone that's interested in kind of getting Atlassian certified, there's going to be some programs there and some exams that you can take as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, and you can check out if you had any questions about that. There's definitely people from university or whatever they're going to be calling it in the community lounge. Community and university has a lounge on the expo floor that has things going on throughout the day as well. But here are the tracks. If you wanted to focus in on specific things, you just focus on those tracks and highlight the things that you want to see. I believe once you get in and register, you can actually highlight the items that you're interested in, and then you'll get alerted. There's an app to download after April 1st, and you can go back in and track these. If you're just an online attendee, you can track those once they become available. You'll be able to see those in your list.
Right. Excellent. You didn't mention Hawaiian shirt. What was it? What was it?
So Bash is on Thursday night. That's the last day of the session of the conference. They always do a big party at the end for everybody. Lots of food and drinks and entertainment. And this year's theme is, what was it? Summer something? I forgot already. Ugh.
It's all right. It's yeah, I forget. It was like Hawaiian, I thought.
Well, it's Hawaiian themed, so you have to get your surf glove. Oh, no, I can't even find it in our Slack.
Be prepared for a hula outing while there. All right. Well, with that, I know we are at the top of the hour and we went a little long. So again, I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. We really do appreciate it. And thank you all so much for hanging in there with us. Hopefully you got some value out of the presentation. Any other questions, thoughts, any other topics anyone would like to talk about, we're here for a while.
And please
yeah.
fill out the survey when you get it, especially if there's anything you want us to cover in the future.
Yes. It's important for us to understand, again, we're the facilitators for the community. So as we get feedback from you, if there's different types of topics you want to talk about in the future, we can get folks in like Hargender or product managers or anyone you need to kind of talk about things like maybe AI in the future, right, for our next step, which is always a good one. Other sorts of products, Atlas, things that are usually a dark art, right? We can hopefully shed some light on for you by bringing some folks that are responsible for the product management from Atlassian. So feel free to reach out.
So George, we had another request for the recording, just so you know.
Okay. Yes, we'll send to this team that's on here a link to the recording once we get it finally published. Expect that maybe tomorrow sometime, but we'll send that out to you. All right, with that, if there's no other questions or thoughts, goals as a topic. Yeah, I like that. I think we did one. Did we do one last year as well? Not so much on goals, but on what is it? The discovery tool. What do they call it? The product discovery.
Product discovery.
Which does have some kind of goals sort of stuff. Again, I love their product discovery. I think it's awesome. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you did a demo of it last year.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that again. I think that's a great product. Again, you can kind of define goals as well and other fun stuff like that to rate your organization and figure out what the right demands are to work on. All right, folks. Any other questions, thoughts before we break?
Nope, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and we'll see you again. Right? We do this, like I said, every quarter. So look forward to seeing you guys again. With that,
Bye.
bye. Ciao.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Agenda.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Okay. Ciao, guys.